General William Tecumseh Sherman, he's credited with coining the phrase, "War is hell." He was right, of course. It's the reason American leadership demands the use of all the tools at our disposal to deter conflict. And in the absence of that deterrence, when conflict erupts, leadership requires not tepidness and fear, but a strategy to win any such war. This month, Russia's invasion of Ukraine will enter its second year, and despite President Biden's attempts to tell one of his stories about strength and resolve, the historical record should reflect that this is his war. Any contention that the war in Ukraine was inevitable is pure political spin. Mr. Biden's war should have been stopped before it started by strong U.S. leadership that was willing to leverage our extraordinary military and intelligence apparatus to save innocent lives. Russian dictator Vladimir Putin gave Mr. Biden nearly a year to enact a deterrence regime using a small number of U.S. military personnel and the repositioning of U.S. and NATO assets. Ukraine could not have deterred this war. It needed President Biden to act, and he failed. Let's rewind back to 2021. The president knew from the buildup of forces and his intelligence agencies that Putin was ready to invade. Instead of sending a clear message that the U.S. and NATO were prepared to support Ukraine's defense pre-invasion, he equivocated. He even publicly threw cold water on Mr. Putin's resolve to invade. He pulled U.S. military trainers out of the country. He closed our embassy and told American citizens that they should leave because they wouldn't be rescued. Mr. Biden denied Ukraine's request for a limited no-fly zone. He refused to send any U.S. naval vessels into the Black Sea, and he repeatedly said publicly that providing significant U.S. military support would be tantamount to causing World War III. What a difference a year makes. Mr. Putin responded with an invasion that sources believe has now claimed more lives in a year on both sides than all deaths associated with the 2 decades of war in Afghanistan. The infrastructure of one of the largest countries in Europe has been obliterated. The atrocities committed by the Russian army and its mercenaries are comparable to those of Islamic terrorists and the Nazis. After establishing the conditions that led to the war, Mr. Biden then chose to prolong the conflict at the cost of countless more lives and billions of U.S. tax dollars. His piecemeal approach to providing weapons after the invasion has drawn out the conflict, allowing time to expose fissures in the NATO alliance, imperiling it as an institution. Mr. Biden is now desperately trying to carve a solid strategy out of the sandy foundations he built for U.S. engagement. Restarting the Iran nuclear talks, the collapse of relations with Saudi Arabia and the UAE, the devastating withdrawal from Afghanistan, and a military struggling to recruit its next generation mean the Biden national security team still has a winless record. The Ukraine invasion itself was yet another loss. Now we have communist China invading our airspace, and this week Mr. Biden backed allowing Russian athletes to participate in the Olympics. None of this, of course, should be surprising. Packed to the gills with the remnants of President Obama's lead from behind crowd, Mr. Biden's top advisors, including Antony Blinken and Avril Haines, have proven they don't have the stomach for bold action in the face of aggressors like Mr. Putin or communist China. That imperils our national security and global security. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has allowed himself to be used as a prop for a race-obsessed administration and has proven to be little more than a warm body, as our defense strategy is driven by liberal think tankers at the White House and the State Department with no stomach for conflict. Of course, the drip, drip, drip approach to arming Ukraine has also created an environment for fraud, waste, and abuse of U.S. resources. More direct U.S. involvement and more rapid deployment of resources, including some measure of our own personnel, would have mitigated the potential for abuse of U.S. assets. Conservatives who are rightfully concerned about aid packages shouldn't train their ire at President Zelensky or abandon the war effort entirely. They should blast a commander-in-chief who helped precipitate and prolong the conflict. War is messy, and it comes with significant costs and risks. This war is another product of a European-style foreign policy emanating from a naive White House that has repeatedly telegraphed fear rather than resolve. There was no strategy to prevent it, and there is no strategy to stop it. And that is why it and all of the death and destruction that has come with it is conclusively Mr. Biden's.